Chapter 51, Kai Vu Village, Convergence. Hey, do you think Niam 2 will come here? Eric Church stared anxiously at the door behind them. His worry was not unfounded. The Niam family had long harbored deep hatred toward the Nguyen clan. Now that Niam 2 had escaped from the deity shrine, the very first thing he would likely do was seek out the spirit medium for revenge. I think what we need to worry about isn't just Niam Tuesday. Eric Church's words made Chris Hemsworth fall silent. His gaze swept the surroundings, as if searching for something unseen. Chris, what's wrong? Alice Englert also sensed that something was off. Chris Hemsworth spoke slowly, revealing a truth that sent a chill down the other two's spines. At the time, following your instructions, we found the book in the spirit medium's bedroom. When we were about to leave, she suddenly came back. After that, she chased us. When we fled, the gate to her house was still wide open. If she wanted to snatch the book back from us, how could she have had the time to return and close the gate before chasing after us? And villagers normally wouldn't come here. So, during the time we were gone from the spirit medium's house, who went inside? Chris Hemsworth's words made their scalps prickle. They watched their surroundings warily, as though something might emerge from the shadows at any moment. No matter what, we need to leave this place first. The three of them immediately left the spirit medium's house. On the way, after hearing the details surrounding the spirit medium's death, Alice Englert said to them, "Let me see the eyes of that skin-wearing ghost." Without hesitation, Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church handed her the two glass eyeballs. After everything they had been through, they now trusted each other. The pair of eyes for a moment, then suddenly spoke. "It doesn't seem to be ghostly aura. Ghostly aura is usually a single mass. It can't be separated into individual parts." Eric Church asked in confusion. "Not ghostly aura? Then doesn't that mean they're useless?" Alice Englert shook her head and said seriously. "Not necessarily. Because they're not ghostly aura, they can't be taken out of the blood gate. But these two glass eyes definitely serve an important purpose. Otherwise, that ghost wouldn't have handed them to you before leaving. Moreover, since they're special items given to you by that ghost, only you can use them. In anyone else's hands, they'd be meaningless." She returned the eyes to them. Chris Hemsworth held them, studying them in silence, deep in thought. Before long, they returned to the guest house, the former Yen Vu temple. "We really have to go back to this cursed place again? Wasn't it said that this place is unclean? Or, should we go to the eatery and stay the night there?" This was the first time they had observed their lodging from afar at night. The feeling was strangely unsettling. All three felt that the guest house was dark and ominous. Those pitch-black windows looked like gaping mouths, ready to swallow them whole. The group with the guy in glasses hasn't come back either. Their room was not far from the glasses-wearing man's room. Chris Hemsworth glanced through the window. No lights were on inside, and the curtains were completely still. He guessed that either the three of them had been killed by Niam 2, or they had discovered something and left this place. "Maybe we shouldn't go back in. It's not safe outside the blood jade." The closer they got to the guest house, Yen Vu temple, the brighter the red glow from the jade became. Clearly, there was something unclean inside the guest house. "Let's go to the eatery. If nothing unexpected happens, the others should be there too." By now, night had completely fallen. Strange presences lingered throughout the village. Staying outside any longer was too dangerous, so the three decided to head to the eatery, the old guest house, to take shelter for the night. As they approached, they could already see a light glowing inside from afar. That circle of light made the empty, silent eatery feel a little warmer. Stepping inside and entering the lit room, they saw the glasses-wearing man and the timid girl, Irma, sitting in silence, staring at each other. Alice Englert. Seeing Alice Englert safe and sound, the glasses-wearing man was overjoyed. In a situation this dangerous, one more person was far better than one less. What's more, Alice Englert was intelligent, capable, and always calm under pressure, an invaluable member of the group. "Tell us what happened on your side first," Alice Englert said. In response, the glasses-wearing man nodded, his face slightly pale. He's dead. That disgusting ghost chased us all the way down the mountain. Everyone ran for their own lives, no one had time to care about him. Later, when we returned to the guest house, we waited and waited, but he never came back. Instead, we only saw a small ghost, burned pitch black, with only half its body left. Recalling what had happened at the guest house, Yen Vu Temple, both the glasses-wearing man and Irma trembled, clearly still shaken by the horrific experience. That ghost didn't intend to kill them. Its main goal was to wander around the guest house, searching for something. Otherwise, they would already be dead. "The situation is clear now," Alice Englert said. After the spirit medium died, the ghosts suppressed in Kai Vu village were released. They can no longer restrain themselves. They want to slaughter the entire village. At this, Irma burst into sobs, clamping her hand tightly over her mouth to keep from making a sound. Despair enveloped everyone. "So, does that mean we're doomed?" Eric Church collapsed into a chair, his eyes vacant. "Not necessarily doomed," Alice Englert replied. She crossed her arms over her chest, and her next words brought a glimmer of hope to them all. "The mission within this blood gate lasts 7 days. That means that within these 7 days, the ghosts in this world are still restrained by the rules of the blood gate. They can't kill us at will. Otherwise, with Nium 2's power and resentment, we wouldn't have survived until now. The real problem is how to quickly find the skull of the monk, Tu Bai, and return it to him. Only when Tu Bai recovers his skull can the village truly return to peace." Chapter 52, Kai Vu Village, A New Clue. www. You make it sound so easy. The village is this huge, how are we supposed to find it? Who knows where his head was thrown away? 5 of us, how could we possibly find that skull in just 2 days? If we can't find it, we're dead for sure, www. Irma, the timid young girl from the sect, finally collapsed under overwhelming fear and despair. No one spoke. No one blamed her. In truth, she had left a fairly good impression on them. Though cowardly and prone to tears, she had never shrunk back when searching for clues at scenic spots or on the mountain. No matter how frightened she was, she always forced herself to follow the glasses-wearing man. And besides, in their current situation, no one could fault Irma. "Irma is right," Chris Hemsworth finally spoke after a long silence. "If we keep searching blindly, there's no way we'll find that skull in 2 days. There must be a clear clue related to the skull. We've missed something very important. Everyone, think carefully." The room fell into silence. Though they held little hope, everyone tried to recall everything they had experienced since entering the blood gate. Had they missed something? It didn't seem so. Not only did it feel like nothing had been overlooked, it felt as if they had accomplished almost nothing over the past 5 days. A heavy sense of dejection settled over the room. At last, Chris Hemsworth took out the eye the female skin-wearing ghost had given him. She hadn't told him how to use it, and the blood gate had offered no hints. Yet at this moment, Chris Hemsworth seemed to realize something. He placed the eye on the table. No one understood what he intended to do, but they all watched closely. After a brief silence, the ghost's eye on the table suddenly moved. Everyone snapped to attention. "Quick, bearded one, give me the other Church." He nodded, hastily taking out the other eye and handing it over. Chris Hemsworth placed the 2 eyes together. After a moment of movement, they realized that both eyes were staring in the same direction. That direction was toward Kai Vu village itself. Is it telling us that the skull is in Kai Vu village?" Irma asked softly. Chris Hemsworth shook his head. I'm not completely sure, but it's very possible. In any case, we can't see what ghosts can see. Maybe this is the reward she left us after we helped her fulfill her wish for revenge. No matter what, tomorrow morning, we have to make a trip to Kai Vu village. Everyone nodded lightly. Having a target, even a vague one, was far better than wandering around like headless flies. Kai Vu village was not small. If they searched it thoroughly, not to mention the remaining 2 days, even 2 more months wouldn't be enough. They arranged a watch rotation. Chris Hemsworth took the first shift. When the others drifted off to sleep, Chris Hemsworth, bored, took out the ancient book he had found in the spirit medium's estate. He flipped through it for a long while, then noticed several disturbing details. Grafting flesh and transplanting bones. The moment he saw those words, Chris Hemsworth felt uneasy. He carefully turned the pages, growing more horrified the further he read. It turned out that the body the spirit medium was using wasn't her own at all. She had used this evil technique to graft her head onto another person's body, then tossed her own headless corpse, still carrying a dense aura of her presence, up the mountain for Niam-2 to vent his rage upon. This made Niam-2 believe he had killed her, thus soothing his resentment. Although ghosts are born after human death, they are not simply human souls. Most possess intelligence far inferior to humans. At the very least, Niam-2 had been deceived by the spirit medium in this way for over 20 years. Never wrap fire. No matter how foolish Niam-2 was, after more than 20 years of deception, he was bound to notice the trick. Moreover, as she repeatedly used this evil grafting technique, the spirit medium discovered in terror that her head was gradually rotting away. Each time she switched to a new body, her head became more decayed, and more dull-witted. She believed it was due to incompatibility between head and body. From then on, she began frantically searching for more suitable bodies, and the number of containers holding human heads in her estate steadily increased. No wonder the villagers were so terrified of her. A gentle female voice suddenly spoke from behind Chris Hemsworth. He turned around to see Alice Englert standing there. At some point unknown to him, she had come up behind him and had been watching for quite a while. "Sister Alice, you're not sleeping?" Chris Hemsworth asked. Alice Englert sat down beside him, took out her phone, lit up the screen, and placed it in front of him. "It's already 2 in the morning. It's my turn to keep watch. Go get some sleep." Chris Hemsworth looked at the phone screen. On it was a photo of a young woman, very beautiful. She was even more striking than Alice Englert herself, a rare kind of beauty. Her temperament was also completely different, lacking Alice Englert's mature allure, yet brimming with youthful liveliness. "This is Kirsten," Chris Hemsworth blurted out. Alice Englert looked surprised by the question. She clearly hadn't expected him to know Kirsten, and for a moment, she froze. After a pause, she gave a soft "mm." "Yes. Could you tell me her story?" Chris Hemsworth said. "I'm not very sleepy." At the mention of this old acquaintance, an unhidden pain surfaced in Alice Englert to be a deeply emotional girl, but she had never imagined that someone as lively and cheerful as Kirsten would end her own life. She used to be very timid, just like Irma. But she was always proactive in everything, even searching for clues to survive. When we entered the blood gate together, it was almost always Kirsten dragging me along to look for a way out. Even when she was scared to tears, she kept moving forward. Everyone loved her humor and liveliness. At that time, Ghost House was still crowded, there were 15 people. I was afraid of strangers, afraid of them too. It was Kirsten who helped me quickly integrate into the group. So I was always grateful to her. We became close friends very quickly. She adapted easily, she was someone perfectly suited for the foggy world. Back then, I had severe fear of ghosts. Almost every 3 days, Kirsten would drag me into low-difficulty blood gate missions, helping me overcome that fear. She told me it was the fastest way to improve myself. With her constant help, I slowly adapted to this bizarre world. That was the happiest period of my life. We ate together, watched TV, talked, and cleared stages together in the worlds beyond the Blood Gate. Alice Englert spoke softly, her voice flowing gently like water, completely immersed in her memories. A tender smile bloomed on her beautiful face. The light from the phone screen illuminated her features, and Chris Hemsworth could see longing welling up in her eyes. Clearly, she cherished that time deeply. At first, we thought those good days would go on forever. But then, something unexpected happened at Ghost House. Chapter 53, Kai Vu Village, Words in the Night. When the events that had happened at Ghost House back then were mentioned, Alice Englert's expression began to change. It was fear. Seeing this reaction, Chris Hemsworth couldn't help but grow curious about what had truly occurred in Ghost House that year. In his understanding, Alice Englert was an exceptionally calm and composed woman. She had survived countless life-and-death dangers. Regardless of experience, her psychological resilience alone far surpassed that of ordinary people. Yet now, even someone as steady as Alice Englert was showing fear. However, she clearly did not wish to explain everything in detail, only speaking vaguely. After that incident, more than half the people in Ghost House died. Most of the veterans were gone. We were forced to step into their roles and inherit their will, and from time to time, we had to enter extremely dangerous blood gates to complete missions. Although she didn't specify what had happened, Chris Hemsworth could already guess, it was related to the puzzle pieces within Ghost House. They died because of those puzzle pieces. Alice Englert fell silent for a long time before finally nodding. She let out a sigh. If you don't try to pursue the puzzle pieces, then what choice do you have? Chris Hemsworth asked, voicing something he genuinely cared about. Alice Englert looked at him. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I know what you want to ask. After all, as long as people keep participating in low-difficulty Blood Gate missions, survival rates stay very high, especially after obtaining ghost artifacts. Failure seems almost impossible. That's what you're thinking, right? Chris Hemsworth nodded slightly. That was indeed the case. In the foggy world, every chosen person must pass through 9 blood gates. The first 3 are spaced 1 week apart. The 4th to the 6th are 6 months apart. The 7th to the 9th come 1 year apart. And each blood gate is more difficult than the last, of course, except for special cases like you. According to statistics, the mortality rate at the 7th gate reaches 95.796%. As for the 8th and 9th, there's no need to even mention them. Death is almost guaranteed. So, in order to leave this place before the 7th blood gate arrives and escape the curse, every member of Ghost House will do everything possible to collect the puzzle pieces. And the life-risking puzzle pieces only appear after the 4th high-difficulty blood gate. Only a Ghost House that possesses a complete puzzle can obtain the qualification to reach the end point of the foggy world. Chris Hemsworth frowned. The end point of the foggy world. What's there? Alice Englert shook her head. A trace of confusion surfaced even in her clear eyes. No one knows. Those who entered the end point of the foggy world never came back. Then how can you be sure that entering the end point will break the Blood Gate's curse? Chris Hemsworth pressed sharply. Faced with the question, Alice Englert remained silent for a long time. Actually, sometimes, you don't need to be sure that it's true. Humans are very fragile creatures. No matter what, we need a reason to keep living. Don't we? Chris Hemsworth and Alice Englert looked at each other for a moment, then nodded lightly. That's true. It truly was. Faced with a nearly 100% mortality rate at the 7th blood gate, it was better to gamble on collecting puzzle pieces and head to the end of the foggy world to see what lay there. At least they could satisfy a bit of curiosity before dying. To the cursed residents of Ghost House, the puzzle pieces were like psychological comfort, a fragile hope of survival. For those living in despair, nothing was more precious than hope. As for the conflicts between Alice Englert's ghost house and other ghost houses, Chris Hemsworth didn't ask further. First, there was nothing he could help with at the moment. Second, he disliked getting involved in unnecessary trouble. Of course, if Alice Englert ever needed his help, that would be a different matter entirely. All right. It's almost 3 already. We've talked long enough. Go get some sleep, tomorrow will be a hard fight, Alice Englert said. Chris Hemsworth nodded. He now had a rough idea of what awaited him next. He stood up and walked into the room to rest. Behind him, Alice Englert propped her chin on her hand, tilting her head as she watched his retreating figure. Her gaze was distant, as if lost in thought. At last, dawn of the 6th day arrived. Everyone was in poor spirits. They had taken turns keeping watch through the night, and with Niam too, the major boss of this blood gate, having descended from the mountain behind the village, no one dared to sleep too deeply. As daylight broke, they gathered early at the main dining hall, planning to eat a full breakfast before entering the village to search for the skull of the monk, Tubai. But today, something was off. The staff who usually opened the dining hall early were unexpectedly absent. From just past 5 in the morning until 9, not a single person made everyone uneasy, as though a shadow had fallen over them. What's going on today? Even the cooks didn't show up. After the spirit medium died, they can't even be bothered to keep up appearances anymore. Eric Church, who hadn't slept all night and was starving, complained irritably. He walked to the front entrance of the dining hall, glanced down the distant road, and after confirming no one was coming, finally lost patience and went into the kitchen himself. A short while later, Eric Church came out carrying a messy assortment of food. This is all that's left in the kitchen. Let's just make do, he said, then let out a belch. It tasted sour. Seeing the strange looks on everyone's faces, he coughed awkwardly, his face reddening. I just ate a salted egg. Took me ages to find it. No one blamed him. After all, without Eric Church, they wouldn't even have had breakfast. After a makeshift meal, they packed up and headed into the village. The weather wasn't great. It had already been gloomy, and as they entered the forest, thunder suddenly rumbled overhead, followed by a light rain. Tap, tap, tap. Raindrops struck the forest leaves, creating dense, rattling sounds that set everyone on edge. They pushed through the thick undergrowth. When they finally reached the village entrance, the horrifying scene inside left them frozen in place. Chapter 54, Kai Vu Village, Entering the Village. Standing at the village entrance, everyone realized that the entire village was shrouded in a torrential downpour. The rain poured down like a deluge from the heavens, as if it meant to drown the whole village. More terrifying still, the vivid crimson color and the stench in the air made it unmistakably clear that the rain falling within the village was blood. Damn it! Eric Church finally couldn't hold back and cursed in his local dialect. Though the others didn't understand the words, they knew exactly what he was cursing. I don't want to go in. Already on edge, Irma began trembling violently at the sight of the village engulfed in a rain of blood. She clamped her legs together tightly, struggling to keep herself from wetting her pants. Seeing this, everyone's faces turned deathly pale. The blood of the righteous runs dry, turning into a rain of calamity. At that moment, everyone recalled the warning displayed on the blood gate before they had entered. Is Niam too inside the village? At the mention of that name, not only the glasses-wearing man and Irma, but even Eric Church shuddered involuntarily. What had happened yesterday had clearly left a deep psychological scar on all of them. Listen, you have to understand, if that thing is in there, then going in is no different from throwing ourselves into a tiger's jaws. Chris Hemsworth didn't answer right away. Before them, nearly every corner of the village was soaked in a terrifying, fresh crimson. Clearly, Niam too had already reached the village. But if Niam too was here, why was the rain of blood still falling? And if he hadn't left, wouldn't
instant,
entering mean countless
death.
thoughts tangled in Chris Hemsworth's mind. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Then he took out the pair of eyes gifted by the female skin-wearing ghost and placed them on his palm. Clack. Clack. The eyes rocked incessantly in Chris Hemsworth's hand, and at last, fixed their gaze in a certain direction within the village. Seeing this, no one spoke. Going in together might be too risky, Chris Hemsworth pondered for a moment, then said. How about this, I'll go in first and take a look. If I'm not back in 2 hours, you all think of another plan. When Chris Hemsworth said this, the way everyone looked at him subtly changed. Especially Irma. Her gaze had almost turned into that of a fanatical admirer. Brother Chris, you're amazing. You dare go into a village like this alone, aren't you afraid of dying? In Irma's heart, there wasn't just admiration, but also a hint of envy. If only she had that kind of courage. She wouldn't have to live in constant fear like this, unable to get a single good night's sleep since entering this gate. A flicker of surprise also appeared in Alice Englert's eyes. She already knew Chris Hemsworth's mental fortitude, but only now did she realize she had underestimated this newcomer. She even began to wonder whether Chris Hemsworth was truly an ordinary person at all. Thinking back to her own first time entering the Blood Gate, when she had been so terrified she wet the bed. Alice Englert couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Comparing people really was infuriating. She had gone through countless life and death trials before finally overcoming her fear of ghosts. Yet Chris Hemsworth, this guy, seemed to have been born with far more nerve than the average person. Going in alone is still too dangerous. I'll go with you, Eric Church said, as he trusted Chris Hemsworth's ability and luck. Second, he genuinely wasn't at ease letting Chris Hemsworth go in alone. I'll go too, Alice Englert said after a moment's thought. So far, we have no other clues that can confirm the importance of the eyes the female skin-wearing ghost gave Chris. Wherever she's looking must contain something important, even if it isn't the skull of the monk, it will still greatly help our survival. This village is already on the verge of losing control. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. Instead of standing here waiting to die, we might as well gamble once. More people searching will definitely be faster than just one. After Alice Englert spoke, the glasses-wearing man and Irma hesitated briefly, then also decided to follow them into the Blood Rain village. Ugh! The overwhelming stench of fresh blood was so strong that two of them nearly vomited the moment they stepped inside. It took a long while before they managed to adapt to the smell. Chris Hemsworth kept the eyes resting on his palm. What was interesting was that, although none of them carried umbrellas, thanks to the eyes of the female skin-wearing ghost, a vacuum-like zone formed around them, isolating them from the rain of blood. Though the area wasn't large, it was enough to cover the entire group. This is much better than expected, Alice Englert said with a smile. While she could endure being drenched in blood rain, that didn't mean she liked it. In most cases, girls still preferred cleanliness more than men. The group pressed deeper into the village, carefully observing their surroundings. It wasn't particularly dark outside, but no sunlight could penetrate the village. Those who entered felt as though everything before their eyes was dim and gloomy. Eric Church seemed to notice something. He pointed toward the distance, his voice filled with fear. Look over there. Everyone followed his gesture and held their breath. They had never seen a sight so strange and terrifying. Amid the rain of blood, lining both sides of the village road, hanging before the doors of every house, were several shattered corpses. Each body had been torn apart, as if smashed by various tools. Fresh red muscle was exposed, organs dangled from split bellies, and pale bones were faintly visible. Most horrifying of all, every corpse hanging under the eaves bore a bizarre smile on its ashen face, staring fixedly at the people entering the village. They seemed to be, silently welcoming the visitors. Ah! Irma, the most timid of them all, couldn't bear those horrifying gazes. She screamed, clutched her head with both hands, and collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, Chris Hemsworth reached out and pulled her up with one hand. "If you're scared, don't look. And don't squat on the ground. If danger comes, you won't have time to run." Held by Chris Hemsworth, Irma felt a little more at ease, but she still kept her head lowered, not daring to look ahead. She was trembling so violently that Chris Hemsworth felt that without his support, she wouldn't even be able to stand. At that moment, Alice Englert suddenly stepped forward and took hold of Irma. "I'll handle her. You focus on leading the way." Chris Hemsworth nodded lightly. Following the direction indicated by the eyes, he continued guiding everyone deeper into this horrific village. Chapter 55, Kai Vu Village, The Skull. Damn it, these corpses are truly horrifying. Good thing they don't move. As the group ventured deeper into the village, their fear gradually subsided. Because they soon realized that the villagers hanging in front of their houses were no longer alive. They had merely been killed, and deliberately arranged that way. After walking for about 10 minutes, Chris Hemsworth suddenly stopped in front of a small building that had clearly been abandoned for a long time. The structure was built of bricks mixed with patches of cement. Cobwebs filled every corner, thick dust coated the floor, and it looked as though no one had lived there for ages. "No corpses hung here. This is the place," Chris Hemsworth said. They stepped beneath the eaves. To be safe, Chris Hemsworth deliberately took out the blood jade he carried. A red glow spread from it, not too strong, not too weak. Chris Hemsworth circled the area once, and a crack suddenly appeared on the blood jade. He said nothing more. He knew the blood jade also had limits. Alice Englert had told him that any ghost artifact obtained beyond the blood gate came with a usage limit. Powerful ghost artifacts usually could not be used more than 3 times. And some special ones, like the blood jade, could be activated more often, but they were far from limitless. "There's no ghost inside. Otherwise, the blood jade's glow would change." Chris Hemsworth's voice was calm, but in truth, he was not entirely certain. Because the ghost named Nium-2 was truly terrifying. It was not impossible that he could completely conceal his presence. "Let's go in together." "Be careful, everyone," Alice Englert said as she stepped forward and opened the door. Creak. A grating, eerie sound rang out as the old wooden door was pushed open. A thick cloud of dust filled the room. As the group entered, the disturbed creatures turned into dark blurs and vanished into the corners. This building was far larger than the ordinary villagers' homes. In a poor place like Kai Vu Village, anyone who could live here must have held a special status. In the left corner of the main hall on the first floor hung a dust-covered photograph, a family of 3. A man, a woman, and a little girl. Chris Hemsworth had seen the man's photograph in the ancient book kept in the spirit medium's room. He was the son of Nguyen Kai Hong, Nguyen Ham. Nguyen Ham was the spirit medium's father, and a crucial link in how Kai Vu Village had become what it was today. "It looks like this is Nguyen Ham's house." After searching for a while, they finally found a coffin in the southern room of the first-floor hall. They exchanged glances. Alice Englert held a wooden comb, stepped forward, and lifted the coffin lid. Nothing leapt out as they had subconsciously expected. Inside lay only a skeleton, and an intact skull. The skull's eyes were tightly shut. Though pale, it did not give off a gloomy feeling, but instead conveyed a strange sense of peace. In addition, they noticed that the skull was completely hairless. Excited, Alice Englert reached out to take the skull from the skeleton's hands. But the instant she touched it, the skeleton's pale hands suddenly clamped onto her wrist. The others moved to help, but they heard Alice Englert speak. "You destroyed this village while you were alive. Was that not enough? Look at what the village outside has become now, a terrifying hell. You made mistakes in life. Do you still want to keep making them after death?" Whether it was because Alice Englert's accusation struck home and made Wyndham's skeleton feel remorse, or because it retained only a trace of obsession and was not truly a vicious ghost, no one knew. The skeleton really did release its grip. On Alice Englert's fair wrist were 2 pitch-black fingerprints. "Alice, are you okay?" Eric Church asked anxiously. Alice Englert shook her head. "Let's leave quickly. I keep feeling that something about this village isn't right." The others nodded lightly. No one could feel comfortable in a village drowned in blood rain. But just as they stepped outside, a piercing scream suddenly rang out. It was Irma. They saw Irma, who had been walking in front, drenched as blood rain poured down from the sky. She hurriedly retreated beneath the eaves, hugged herself, and squatted on the ground, crying loudly, as if she wouldn't survive much longer. Sensing something was wrong, Chris Hemsworth quickly took out the eyes given to him by the skin-peeling female ghost. But when he placed the eyes on his palm, everyone saw that they were dissolving, turning into a pool of clear liquid at a speed visible to the naked eye. What happened? Eric Church froze. They had relied entirely on these ghostly eyes to move freely through the blood rain. Now that the eyes had disappeared, didn't that mean all of them would be soaked by this strange blood rain? "See if there's an umbrella inside the house," Chris Hemsworth said, reacting first. A strong sense of unease had already begun to rise within him. He couldn't say exactly what was wrong, but the feeling was awful, as if something terrifying was about to happen, urging them to leave this place immediately. They searched the house, but found no umbrella. Damn it, how can a house not even have an umbrella? Well, this is Kai Vu Village. Just hearing the name tells you how much the villagers love rain. Not preparing umbrellas actually makes sense. The bespectacled man forced a pale, bitter smile. With no other choice, they charged straight into the blood rain. They all knew how dangerous the village was. The longer they delayed, the higher their chances of death. The blood rain poured down violently. The moment they stepped into the thick, sticky downpour, an icy chill pierced straight through them. Now they understood why Irma had reacted so violently. Not daring to waste a second, they sprinted toward the village gate, ignoring the blood rain hammering down upon them. Chapter 56, Kai Vu Village, Blood Rain. The 5 of them left the room and headed toward the village gate, with Chris Hemsworth leading the way. He deliberately avoided running too fast. Chris Hemsworth knew that this terrifying blood rain placed immense psychological pressure on them. Under such pressure, if the one in front panicked and fled recklessly, it would only amplify the other's fear, potentially plunging them into uncontrollable chaos. As the leader, he had to regulate his pace. Fast, but never frantic. Without the eyes of the skin-peeling female ghost to shield them from the blood rain pouring from the sky, everyone was forced to raise their hands to cover their faces, desperately blocking the thick, sticky blood so they could barely make out the road ahead. When they reached the village's main road, Eric Church suddenly let out a strange scream. Following his cry, the others immediately noticed something was terribly wrong. The corpses hanging in front of the houses, those that should have been facing the village gate, had somehow turned around at some unknown moment. Their hollow smiles were now fixed directly on the 5 people standing in the middle of the road. The sight nearly shattered Irma's sanity. She let out a piercing scream, clutched her head, and bolted wildly in an unknown direction. The blood rain was too heavy, mixed with a hazy mist that obscured everyone's vision. Chris Hemsworth could only rely on memory to keep moving toward the village gate. When Irma broke down, Chris Hemsworth had tried to grab her, but failed. Alice Englert couldn't hold her either. Neither could he. Irma, the bespectacled man shouted, about to chase after her, but Eric Church quickly stopped him. Calm down. We can barely save ourselves right now, there's no way we can save her. Get to the village gate first. Restrained by Eric Church, hurry. The bespectacled man looked pained. Though he hadn't known Irma before, after days together as a group, the timid yet sensible girl had left a good impression on him. He desperately wanted to pull her back, to keep her from dying inside this blood gate. But disasters always strike without warning. They were running toward the light of dawn, while Irma collapsed into the darkness behind them. She hadn't run far before a shrill, agonized scream echoed out. They couldn't see what had happened to her, only a vague black shadow slipping through the curtain of blood rain. They all knew what that shadow was. It was Niam too. "Move!" Chris Hemsworth roared, locking onto the direction of the village gate and sprinting forward. The others followed closely behind. They ran with all their strength, yet no matter how fast they went, they couldn't shake the terrifying shadow behind them. Niam too didn't seem to be moving, yet within the blood rain, his shadow drew closer and closer to the group. "This is bad!" Alice Englert suddenly shouted. "Stop!" At her words, everyone halted instantly. This came from their absolute trust in Alice Englert. "What is it, Sister Alice?" Eric Church wiped the blood from his face and asked. Alice Englert turned around, staring at the shadow advancing toward them. A ruthless glint flashed in her eyes. After a moment, she clenched her teeth and said, "Run toward it." Everyone froze. "Now." Alice Englert didn't explain further and took the lead, charging straight at the shadow. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church exchanged a glance. Almost without hesitation, they followed Alice Englert. The bespectacled man ran after them as well. Though his rational mind screamed that this was suicide, his faith in the three of them compelled him to follow. And so, the group hurled themselves straight toward the shadow. Everyone felt their hearts jam up into their throats, as if about to burst out. They didn't know what Alice Englert intended to do, or what she had discovered. They only knew that if Alice Englert had misjudged even slightly, all of them would die. Niam too's horrifying, shattered face loomed before them. He sneered at them, his eyes flashing with terrifying malice. He stretched a hand toward Alice Englert charging at the front, his mouth opening wide like a basin of blood. The sight made everyone's breath catch. "Don't stop, don't look back." Alice Englert screamed again, just before colliding with Niam too. In the next instant, her body passed straight through him, unharmed, sprinting toward the sea of blood ahead. Seeing this, the others' confidence surged, and they all rushed toward Niam too. Every one of them passed through his body without injury, chasing after Alice Englert. The shadow behind them turned back, glaring resentfully at their retreating figures, but did not move. "Damn it, Sister Alice, what the hell is going on?" Eric Church asked, still his usual self, full of endless questions. Panting, Alice Englert replied. "Inside the blood gate, there's a very strange rule. This rule only applies to the first 3 gates. That is, within a short period of time, a ghost can only kill 1 person. Although the difficulty of this blood gate far exceeds that of an ordinary second gate, in essence, it is still a second gate, and it must obey this rule." At once, everyone understood. Irma had just been killed by Niam too, so in a short time, he could not attack them again. Knowing full well he couldn't harm us, he still rushed out to chase us. "There's only one explanation," Alice Englert continued. "He was trying to hurt us in this direction. So this is definitely not the exit." Chris Hemsworth frowned. "If I remember correctly, that direction really is the way out of the village." Alice Englert shook her head. "Chris, you're very capable, but you're still a bit rigid. This village is an open one. There are multiple ways out, it doesn't have to be that direction. And didn't you notice, the road we took earlier had no blood rain at all?" At this crucial clue, everyone froze. They lowered their heads, staring at the bright red blood covering their bodies, as if suddenly realizing something. This is Niam too's resentment. Before, we were protected by the eyes of a female ghost, so we weren't touched by the blood rain. Now that those eyes have been destroyed, our entire bodies are drenched in Niam too's resentment. In that case, there are only 2 possibilities once we leave the village. First, the moment we leave the blood rain, we die instantly. Second, we will never be able to escape the blood rain at all. Eric Church's eyes widened in realization. Sister Alice, are you saying this blood rain is actually Neum 2's ghost domain? Alice Englert nodded lightly. You can understand it that way. And I secretly used a ghost artifact to test it, that's why I was able to stop you in time. Hearing this, everyone felt a chill run through them. Especially Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church. They had experienced firsthand the terror of this blood gate. In other words, if Alice Englert hadn't followed them this time and guided them through the gate, they likely would have died right there. Then how do we get out? The bespectacled man gasped, asking the most pressing question. According to what you said, no matter what we do, we can't escape this blood rain. Does that mean we're going to die? Chapter 57, Kai Vu Village, Compassion. It's not that serious. Alice Englert pointed toward the blood rain in the distance. Only then did everyone strain their eyes to look, and were horrified to discover that the area covered by the blood rain was not limited to the village alone. After the spirit medium died, all restraints on Neum 2 were completely lifted. His resentment began to spread. Anywhere he passes, blood rain will begin to fall. We just need to follow the remaining path to the temple on the mountain. Eric Church asked in confusion. But aren't we supposed to find the body of the monk, too by? Just the head isn't enough. Alice Englert shook her head. The body has already been found. Just follow me. The rules of the blood gate won't restrain Neum 2 for long. We have to hurry. Everyone nodded lightly and followed Alice Englert, moving along the path Neum 2 had taken, heading toward the mountain temple behind the village. They moved quickly. After all, no one knew how long the blood gate's rules could hold the ghost back. At this moment, Neum 2 lurked within the blood rain like a blade hanging over their heads, ready to fall at any time. When they reached the foot of the mountain once more, the blood flowing down the stone steps had already formed a small stream. As they climbed, one misstep could send them slipping. Hurry! They staggered upward. When they reached the mountainside, Chris Hemsworth looked down, and his heart clenched. Neum 2 has caught up. He shouted. The others heard and turned back, only to see that black shadow standing at the foot of the mountain, coldly staring up at them. Just one glance sent a chill racing up everyone's spine. The next second, the shadow abruptly appeared on the second stone platform of the steps. Don't look, keep moving. Alice Englert screamed through clenched teeth, leading everyone in a desperate sprint toward the summit, toward the temple nearly drowned in blood. Sister Alice, where's the body? Eric Church shouted in panic as he saw Neum 2 blocking the entrance, though no one knew when he had arrived there. But at this moment, Alice Englert showed no fear at all. Instead, she seemed to relax, a faint smile appearing on her pale face. The monk's body, hasn't it been with us the whole time? The three of them froze. Then, to the shock of the other two, she placed the skull she had been holding, into the bespectacled man's hands. Aren't you the one who's been looking for your head all this time? Now, we've helped you find it. The bespectacled man lowered his head and stared at the skull in his arms for a long time. The haze in his eyes gradually cleared. I remember now. He smiled. Thank you, everyone. As soon as he finished speaking, the body of the bespectacled man before them suddenly became blurred. When it stabilized again, it had turned into the body of a headless monk. The three of them were no strangers to this monk. Just days ago, they had witnessed with their own eyes this very monk fishing human heads out of the well. Yet neither Chris Hemsworth nor Eric Church had ever imagined that this monk had been among them all along, hidden within their group. Eric Church gaped at the monk before him, his throat tight, unable to utter a word. The monk slowly placed the skull onto his neck. After twisting it a few times, the head seemed to settle into place. He pressed his palms together before his chest, looked calmly at the three before him, and bowed slightly. Thank you, benefactors, for helping this humble monk recover his head. What happens next, leave it to me. With that, the monk turned around and walked step by step toward Niam II. His entire body radiating terrifying resentment, showed a flicker of confusion in his eyes when he saw the monk. The monk raised his hand and gently pressed it against Niam II's forehead. Every grievance has its cause, every debt its debtor. Benefactor Niam, those you should have killed, you killed. Those you should not have killed, you also killed. Even now, can you still not let go of this hatred? Niam II's eyes were no longer as chaotic as before, much clearer now. Yet still burning with fury. He reached out and tightly grabbed the monk's wrist. Yet the monk seemed protected by Buddhist scripture, showing no fear of Niam II at all. The two ghosts struggled against each other like this. At that moment, Chris Hemsworth suddenly spoke. Niam II, do you remember when we first entered the village, none of us were touched by the blood rain? Do you know why? It was because we carried the eyes of your wife, Chu Nam Nok. At these words, Niam II froze. His bloodshot eyes, filled with hatred, locked onto Chris Hemsworth. But Chris Hemsworth did not stop. The skull of this monk was found with the help of your wife, Chu Nam Nok. It's not that we want you to let go of this hatred, it's that your wife, Chu Nam Nok, doesn't want to see you continue to be tortured by it. She's tired, and she feels that you should be tired too. Hearing Chris Hemsworth's words, Niam II suddenly clutched his head and let out a piercing, agonized scream. Ah! At that very moment, a woman dressed in red appeared within the torrential rain outside the temple. She floated in midair, holding a child whose body was burned black, only half remaining. The ghostly mother and child stood silently within the blood rain, gazing at Niam II. The monk extended his hand. Slowly, Niam II turned for a long time, until the crimson downpour finally receded, transforming into ordinary rain. From Niam II's mouth came the weary voice of a middle-aged man. Our rain has waited for a very long time. The monk pressed his palms together and recited a Buddhist invocation. Yes. But perhaps, your wife and child have also been waiting for you for a very long time. Niam II sighed, stood up, and turned his back on the temple. Step by step, he walked toward his wife and child and embraced them. Then, all three ghosts vanished into the rain. Seeing this, the three people inside the temple finally exhaled in relief and collapsed onto the ground. They had survived. Master, thank you. They thanked the monk sincerely. Without him, they would certainly have died today. The monk shook his head and smiled gently. If I do not descend into hell, then who will? The vows here have been fulfilled. With no resentment left to linger, it is time for me to leave as well. After he finished speaking, the skull on the monk's neck fell to the ground. Immediately afterward, both his head and body decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye, until they finally turned into mud. A breeze blew in from outside. Cool and refreshing. Chris Hemsworth gathered himself, dragged his exhausted body out of the temple, lifted his head, first washed his face with the rain. Then, gulp by gulp, drank the cool, cleansing downpour. Chapter 58, Return. With no vengeful spirits left to disturb them, the three returned to the guest house beneath a cool, gentle rain. 5 days had passed, yet it felt as though they had lived an entire lifetime. They vaguely remembered that when they first arrived, 11 companions had stood together on the open ground outside the guest house. In just 5 short days, only the 3 of them remained. Everyone else who had entered through the blood gate, had died in this village. The emptiness and silence left behind made it hard for all 3 to adjust. Haze. Eric Church let out a sigh, his gaze complicated. There was a trace of guilt in his heart. Because he felt that those people entering this blood gate had something to do with them. They were just unlucky. Don't think too much about it. As if guessing what Eric Church was thinking, Alice Englert spoke up to comfort him. Eric Church nodded lightly. Right. Sister Alice, how did you know the bespectacled man was the monk? Alice Englert shrugged. Do you remember what you saw on the very first day we arrived? Eric Church thought back for a moment. It had been quite a while ago. After everything they had gone through, such small details were easy to overlook. After some effort, he recalled that when he first stepped through the Blood Gate, he had been at the foot of the rear mountain. At that time, he had personally seen a headless person, mixed in among the crowd. Realization dawned on Eric Church. The three of us definitely weren't, 2-by. And since, 2-by, was already dead, he couldn't die again, so none of the people who died could have been, 2-by. The answer was obvious. As she said this, Alice Englert sighed. It's a pity that girl couldn't withstand the pressure. She was just one step away from leaving this door. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church did not also felt regret for the girl named Irma. Someone who had struggled to survive, searched for clues to a way out, never dragged her teammates down. She had been so close to leaving the Blood Gate, only to fail at the very last step. It was a harsh reminder to both of them of how cruel the world beyond the Blood Gate truly was. 2 days passed. Aside from eating very little, they rested comfortably. That feeling of absolute safety within this ghostly world was strangely exhilarating. During that time, Eric Church even took the initiative to run into the corpse-filled village to look for food. Of course, aside from a few rotten potatoes, he found nothing. At midnight on the 7th day, with a bright moon hanging high in the night sky, an old bus appeared out of nowhere in front of the guest house. The three, sleeping alertly in the reception room, quickly got dressed, grabbed their belongings, went outside, and boarded the bus at once. Dense fog had already spread throughout the area. As the bus slowly drove into the thick fog, the mist within the village rapidly dissipated, but the old bus had long since vanished, as though it had never come at all. The bus stopped at the gates of the ghost house. As soon as the three stepped down, they saw a youthful, cheerful face. It was Andrew Garfield. Seeing the three return safely, John Travolta leaned against the gate of the ghost house, turned around, and went back inside without a word. Andrew Garfield's face, on the other hand, was brimming with excitement. Amazing! I didn't expect you'd actually make it back. He was a little worked up, his small face flushed red, fair, round, and adorably plump. Andrew Garfield stepped forward and hugged Alice Englert. Standing to the side, Chris Hemsworth asked curiously. How did you know we were coming back? Time flows differently in the world behind the Blood Gate and the Fog World. No matter how long you stay there, you'll return to the ghost house at midnight, the moment you entered the Blood Gate. Of course, that's assuming you make it back alive. Chris Hemsworth suddenly understood. Returning to this gloomy villa, both Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church felt a long-lost warmth. Davis Bertans, dressed in a suit, was still warming himself by the charcoal brazier. Quite rare, he said. For newcomers like you to survive such a difficult Blood Gate. There was admiration in Davis Bertans's eyes. Meanwhile, Andrew Garfield was peeling a banana, pouting as he muttered. Isn't it all thanks to my sister Alice leading them? To create a spirit world that surpasses even the restraints, it's terrifying when you think about it. Alice Englert shook her head. Don't say that. I nearly died there myself. If the two of them hadn't risked their lives to save me, I wouldn't be standing here now. Hearing this, the expressions of everyone in the room changed at once. That Blood Gate world was that dangerous? Alice Englert nodded lightly. Yes. The most dangerous thing isn't actually the ghosts there, it's that in this world, it's not only ghosts who want to kill people. Humans want to kill people too. She recounted in detail everything she had experienced in the Blood Gate world. Everyone listened in shock, especially when she described facing the shaman woman alone in the dead of night, leaving her audience drenched in cold sweat. Andrew Garfield, banana half raised, stared wide-eyed, mouth agape, completely absorbed in Alice Englert's story, forgetting entirely about the peeled banana in his hand. Only after she finished did he swallow hard, looking at Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church with astonishment that the two he had always looked down on were far stronger than he had imagined. Especially Chris Hemsworth. In Alice Englert's story, he had been exceptionally brave and cautious. Someone like that, even among those who had entered the Blood Gate many times, was a top-tier existence. Damn it, Chris, you're incredible. What did you do before this? Police? Assassin? With everyone's eyes on him, Chris Hemsworth shrugged. Veterinarian. That was what he said. Whether they believed him or not was another matter entirely. Good, it's good that you're back. After chatting for a while, Davis Berton stood up, seemingly ready to retire. 1 week from now, your third Blood Gate will open. Its difficulty will be much lower than the second, but you still must not take it lightly. I've seen plenty of people fail at the first 3 gates, so even when you relax, you must stay vigilant. Once you pass these 3 gates, you'll have 6 months to fully understand the fog world and the Blood Gates, and to prepare for the 4th gate. By then, you'll have more time. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church nodded lightly, signaling their understanding, and silently let out a breath of relief. Oh, right. Just as Davis Bertans was about to head upstairs, he suddenly called out to Alice Englert. She had been staring at the charcoal brazier and looked up. What is it, Uncle Davis? Davis Bertans replied. The day after tomorrow, there's a very special mission. You'll go with me into the Blood Gate. Alice Englert nodded faintly, understanding without asking further questions. And so, everyone returned to their rooms to rest. After washing up, Chris Hemsworth was about to head to bed when he suddenly felt something inside his pants, an object. He reached in, and pulled out a book. Chapter 59, The Puzzle Pieces. Chris Hemsworth remembered this book. It had been found in a dark recess beneath the shaman woman's bed. If ordinary objects can't be brought out of the Blood Gate, doesn't that mean this book is a piece of ghostly equipment? His eyes lit up. In the previous Blood Gate, Chris Hemsworth had personally experienced just how powerful ghostly equipment could be. Someone with ghostly equipment and someone without it had completely different survival odds after passing through a Blood Gate. If the 3 of them hadn't carried ghostly equipment during their last Blood Gate, they had no idea how many times they would have already died. Their next Blood Gate would open in a week. If Chris Hemsworth possessed another piece of ghostly equipment, his chances of survival would rise dramatically. After flipping through it for a while, he put the book away. He still didn't know what it did and could only test it later. The night passed. Early the next morning, Eric Church got up and prepared breakfast for everyone. It had to be said, his cooking skills were excellent. With sufficient ingredients, just a bowl of potato soup and minced meat porridge was enough to completely win over Andrew Garfield's stomach. The young man ate 3 large bowls, then let out a belch and sprawled across the sofa, rubbing his round belly and squinting in contentment. Bearded bro, your cooking's amazing. How many Michelin stars you got? Did you work for Michelin? Eric Church yawned as he ate his porridge, laughing. Me? I'm not a chef. You guys are just lucky. Out there, I don't even have time to cook. Hearing this, Andrew Garfield tilted his head. Then what do you do outside? The pose of an enlightened master. Fortune-telling. At those words, everyone's expressions turned strange. Andrew Garfield held it in for a moment, then burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. Ha 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 ha. Eric Church didn't understand. He looked at the only person calmly eating and asked. What's so funny? Don't I look like a fortune-teller? Chris Hemsworth raised his eyes and smiled faintly. I think they're laughing because, in this day and age, there are still people running scams. Andrew Garfield chimed in. Exactly. Bearded bro, what era is this? You're still doing fortune-telling? Eric Church glared at him. Go, 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 play somewhere else. What does a kid know? Fortune teller. That sounds awful. I call myself a cultural inheritor. Andrew Garfield laughed smugly. Perhaps because he felt the two of them weren't going to die anytime soon, his previous coldness had vanished, replaced by a much livelier attitude. Bearded bro, tell me, how much do you make a month doing fortune-telling? Eric Church thought for a moment. Usually 1 or 2,000. Sometimes just a few hundred. Hearing this, Andrew Garfield couldn't help laughing again. No way. With your skills, if you were a chef, you'd make at least tens of thousands a month, right? Why become a fortune teller? Eric Church shook his head. This time, he didn't refute Andrew Garfield, only answered softly. Maybe because, fortune-telling is freer. No one believed that reason. But Eric Church said nothing more, and they didn't press further. That was basic respect when dealing with others. Almost everyone had their own secrets. And if it was a secret, it naturally wasn't something to be shared lightly. Still, Chris Hemsworth found himself paying closer attention to Eric Church. Given Eric Church's skill, as long as he opened a small restaurant and endured the first difficult month or two, he could easily earn tens of thousands each month. That wasn't exaggeration. It wasn't a joke. Eric Church truly had that ability. Yet he gave up such income to become a poor fortune teller. His true motive was worth pondering. After breakfast, Davis Bertans had already left early. He always seemed busy. Watching Davis Bertans's departing figure, Chris Hemsworth asked Andrew Garfield, who was playing with a Rubik's Cube on the sofa, curiously. Andrew Garfield, what is Uncle Davis usually busy with? Without looking up, Andrew Garfield replied. Looking for puzzle pieces. Chris Hemsworth froze, then heard him continue. Uncle Davis is incredible. Our ghost house has 6 puzzle pieces in total, half of them were found by him. Andrew Garfield's voice was filled with admiration and gratitude. Chris Hemsworth thought for a moment. Uncle Davis has already reached the 7th blood gate. Andrew Garfield shook his head. The admiration in his eyes deepened. The 9th. Chris Hemsworth was stunned. The 9th? Andrew Garfield nodded. In half a year, Uncle Davis will enter his 9th gate. After seeing the hint for that gate, he believed he would definitely die there. So he went crazy taking missions, trying to collect the puzzle pieces ahead of time. Chris Hemsworth understood at once. If it were me, I'd do the same. After a long silence, Andrew Garfield suddenly spoke in a low voice. You don't understand. Even though Uncle Davis never says it, we all know, he's worried about us. He's never been afraid of death, nor has he ever planned to skip his 9th gate. Those puzzle pieces, he's collecting down that collecting puzzle pieces is probably just a hope. After all, we've only ever heard of seniors who collected them. No one has actually seen a ghost house with a complete set. Chris Hemsworth raised his head, gazing seriously at the puzzle hanging on the wall, and asked casually. Is collecting them that hard? Andrew Garfield sighed and explained a new rule about the puzzle pieces. It's extremely hard, because people keep dying. If you collect 2 pieces and then die, the 2 pieces belonging to you in the ghost house disappear. Others have to collect them all over again. And the life risk puzzle pieces generated from the 4th to the 6th gate have about a 1 in 10 chance of appearing. But that's only the chance of generation. In reality, even if one appears, the person who clears the gate might not be able to obtain it. Just imagine. In a high-difficulty blood gate, you're not only guarding against ghosts, struggling to survive and complete the mission given by the blood gate, but also guarding against the other people who entered with you. Andrew Garfield didn't continue, but from his description alone, Chris Hemsworth could vividly sense just how difficult collecting puzzle pieces truly was. Too many wolves. Behind every single puzzle piece, there was bound to be a brutal struggle. After a moment of silence, Chris Hemsworth suddenly recalled something and asked softly. Uncle Davis's friend, did he also die because of the puzzle pieces? Mentioning Uncle Vincent, Andrew Garfield shook his head. I don't know. They never told me. Maybe they thought I was still young and didn't want me involved in their struggles. Chris Hemsworth nodded, understanding. He reached out and gently patted Andrew Garfield's head. I won't be staying for lunch. I have something to do outside. I'll head back first, tell everyone for me. Andrew Garfield answered with a simple, okay. After saying goodbye, Chris Hemsworth walked out of the villa, boarded a bus, and left the fog-shrouded world behind. Chapter 60, The Cuckoo, The Request. Returning to his apartment, Chris Hemsworth tidied up briefly, wiped clean the photo frame of his parents, and put it back in its place. After showering, he sat at his desk, turned on the computer, and checked the messages from Hamster. Coffin, there's no information at all about that letter from the post office. I contacted a special friend, the Cuckoo. She seems to have found a lead. When are you free? I'll arrange for you two to meet. Reading the messages, Chris Hemsworth felt restless. The two mysterious letters had been haunting him, giving him the constant sensation that someone was watching. He wanted to identify the sender, and their purpose, as soon as possible. So he replied to Hamster. I'm free all this week. Seeing the name, the Cuckoo, Chris Hemsworth frowned slightly. He had heard of her before. Both, Hamster, and Washing Machine, had mentioned a woman known as the Cuckoo. Because of the nature of his work, Chris Hemsworth didn't have many friends, but each one of them was exceptional in their own field. Washing Machine was another of his friends, though they rarely stayed in touch. He worked for the military and only helped Chris Hemsworth with certain personal matters. Military work involved many secrets, leaving little chance for contact. Chris Hemsworth also knew that ordinary people had no opportunity to know someone like Washing Machine. So what made this woman called the Cuckoo special enough to be friends with Washing Machine? Hamster quickly replied, arranging a meeting for the next day at an old cafe called Wood Blossom. The next day, Chris Hemsworth arrived at the meeting place. Not long after, he saw a woman with a graceful figure approaching him in high heels. She wore sunglasses, radiating an indescribable coldness. This woman, though beautiful, gave off a sense of distance, as if she were hard to approach. She quickly recognized Chris Hemsworth and sat down across from him. Your Coffin? She asked. Chris Hemsworth frowned briefly, then relaxed. I prefer people call me Veterinarian. The Cuckoo smiled faintly. Veterinarian? If I didn't know what you've done, I might believe that. Chris Hemsworth smiled without replying and took a light sip of his coffee. Have you found where the letter was sent from? The Cuckoo shook her head. No. But I have other information, something I'm sure you'll find very interesting. Chris Hemsworth raised an eyebrow. Something interesting? Let's hear it. The Cuckoo leisurely took out a cigarette and placed it between her lips. Her long leg tapped lightly against the floor as the private room door closed. She lit the cigarette, exhaled a thin stream of smoke, and looked at Chris Hemsworth. First of all, I didn't come today just to serve you. This is a transaction. Chris Hemsworth nodded lightly, getting straight to the point. What do you want? The Cuckoo looked him over from head to toe before speaking. Help me bury Wolf Head. Chris Hemsworth asked. What did he do? The Cuckoo replied calmly. Crossed the line. Killed someone. She then took out a photograph and handed it to Chris Hemsworth. The man in the photo looked very handsome. Who did he kill? Chris Hemsworth asked. Still calm, the Cuckoo said something that made Chris Hemsworth freeze. He killed me. What do you mean? Tonight. Aren't you going to run? No. As she said this, a pale smile appeared on the Cuckoo's face. Tonight, after I die, you kill him. Chris Hemsworth put the photo away. The cuckoo fell silent. What if you don't die? For a long time. I will definitely die, and it will be ugly. He knows every way to torture me. But tonight, before I die, you are not allowed to enter the room. Chris Hemsworth sighed. All right. Then what information did you want to tell me? The cuckoo didn't answer immediately, as if organizing her thoughts. After a moment, she said. Actually, you're not the only one who received mysterious letters. Chris Hemsworth suddenly looked up, a strange emotion flashing through his eyes. What do you mean? The cuckoo said. Exactly what I said. She stubbed out the cigarette in the ashtray, stood up, and prepared to leave. At the door, the cuckoo paused. There's another person, just like you, who received mysterious letters. No sender could be traced. No signature. The post office has no records at all. The letter simply appeared. About a week ago, that person came to me and asked me to investigate. Chris Hemsworth frowned. Male or female? The cuckoo didn't answer. She only said. That person's name is Red Bean. They contacted me only 3 times. I did a preliminary investigation and found nothing. If you're interested, tonight, after I die, you can take my laptop and look for clues yourself. With that, the cuckoo swayed her slender figure and left. Chris Hemsworth sat alone in the room, staring at the half-finished cup of coffee before him, sinking into silence. Night fell. Chris Hemsworth changed into black clothes, packed his tools, and left his apartment. In Jiangning district, following the cuckoo's instructions, he entered an 11-building complex, took the elevator to the 27th floor, and stopped in front of apartment 2704. The place was deathly quiet. Chris Hemsworth took out a stethoscope and pressed it against the door. He heard a woman's agonized screams, and a man's furious curses. Ah, ah. You fucking bitch, die. The room was extremely well soundproofed. Without the stethoscope, no one outside could have heard anything. Cough, ah ha ha. Gao Fan, don't worry, the money my parents left me. I won't give you a single cent. You bitch, you bitch. I loved you so much, why are you treating me like this? You loved me. You gambling trash. You loved my money. I was stupid back then, believing your sweet lies, ah, cough, cough. The woman began coughing violently. Then came the dull sound of something hard striking flesh, and her screams abruptly stopped. About half a minute later, Chris Hemsworth heard the man's low voice, as if he were muttering to himself. If you didn't give me the money, they would kill me, you're the one who killed me. I was just taking revenge in advance. You, wake up, wake up. Ha ha ha. You're dead. That's great. Warm. I'm your husband, now that you're dead, all the money is mine. The man laughed crazily for a long time, until he finally realized. His door had been opened. A man dressed in black, wearing a mask, revealing only a pair of cold, razor-sharp eyes, was standing in the doorway.